exposed. The incredible truth about the hidden civilization that came long before us. A transformative journey of discovery. Jack Rivera stared at the dusty artifact in his hands, its intricate engravings swirling with symbols that felt both foreign and intimately familiar. Breathlessly, he imagined the lives of the people who once inhabited this land, the descendants of a civilization long forgotten. But alongside that thrill surged a deeper anxiety. Could he carry the weight of this truth? What would the townsfolk whisper when they learned of his grandmother's eccentric claims vindicated? In a small Midwestern town where change was met with resistance, he could already see the doubts rising like fireflies at dusk. It was all too easy for him to picture the knowing smirks of the school board. Their skepticism would echo in his mind long after their words faded. Jack clenched the artifact tighter, a battle raging within him. Could revealing this hidden history redeem him as a teacher, or would it only alienate him further from a community that had never fully appreciated his passion for the past? He felt the pressure mounting, twisting like a vine around his heart, squeezing until his breath quickened. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can, leave a like. It really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jack had always found solace in dusty books and quiet archives. Yet now those familiar haunts felt like traps. Each page he turned and every rotten smell of old paper reminded him of his own limitations. He was just a teacher, not a historian nor an archaeologist. Who was he to unearth a legacy thought lost to time? And what if his efforts crumbled under the skepticism of his peers? The corner cafe, once his sanctuary filled with paper cups and warm pastries, now buzzed with hushed gossip. He caught fleeting glances, felt the weight of judgmental stares. Sinking deeper into his research, Jack became embroiled in his grandmother's legacy, her passion for history misunderstood by many. The bitterness of her ridicule stung anew, cutting deeper with each discovery he made. Could people see him as she had been seen? As someone chasing ghosts instead of embracing present realities? His muscles tensed whenever he thought of the town hall presentation looming ahead. As if standing before a jury, Jack envisioned the faces of his students, the school board, of friendly neighbors turned skeptics. The anguish of his dilemma clawed at his gut. To unveil the truth meant risking everything. The churning unease mixed with determination ignited in him, a new fire, a desire to reclaim a lost narrative steeped in ancestral struggles. Yet what of his own story? Would he not just be a frivolous dreamer throwing shadows on those who never asked for the past to be disturbed? Jack found himself caught between reverence for the discovery and a crushing fear of isolation, certain that stepping into the light might imprison him in the darkness of his fears. As he envisioned that night, his heart breathless and his mind racing, he knew that he was teetering on a precipice, and there would be no turning back. Would he rise to confront the echoes of his grandmother's past? Or would he be buried under the weight of silent tongues and a community that shunned change? The layered complexities of what he was about to unveil danced before him, promising to shake the very fabric of his existence. Jack had no choice but to push forward, every fleeting second inching him closer to an uncertain future. Jack's fingers trembled as he placed the artifact on the cluttered desk, its surface muddied with assignments to grade and papers to review. This was more than a relic. It was an invitation, a call to arms, a beckoning of his spirit towards something grander than his daily life as a history teacher. It represented a bridge between his grandmother's dreams and his own, yet he felt shackled by the very community he yearned to enlighten. The room was stifling, suffocating under the weight of unrealized potential. As the days dwindled down to the presentation date, Jack's thoughts spiraled through realms of both anxiety and audacity. His research deepened, yet each parchment he unearthed fueled a gnawing doubt. Was he merely a conduit for knowledge, or was he risking his identity for the sake of avant-garde truths? During a restless night, Jack opened a window to let in the brisk air, hoping it might clear his foggy mind. Staring into the darkness, he realized that it wasn't the residents of the town who held the power to define him. It was his own belief in himself. Yet, self-doubt resurfaced, a specter he couldn't ignore. What if his great reveal became fodder for ridicule? What if his students, those bright eyes filled with the curiosity of youth, became disillusioned by the harshness of truth? He decided he needed clarity, something to anchor him in his quest. In a flurry of impulse, he grabbed a notebook and started drafting a new lesson plan not just for the students, but for himself. It would explore the very essence of discovery and the courage required to challenge the accepted narratives. He could weave in stories of explorers and pioneers, of those who faced derision yet changed the course of history. This was the moment to evolve, to become more than just Jack Rivera, the town's history teacher. He could transform into an embodiment of that hidden civilization, a resurrector of lost tales. The next morning, vitality surged through him. With renewed purpose, he reached out to local historians, inviting them into his fold, seeking allies who believed in the power of a shared narrative. When he set foot in the library that day, it had morphed from a fortress of his insecurities into a temple of exploration. He needed their perspectives, their expertise. They were as essential as the artifact itself. Their belief in the project could inspire the town to open its ears and minds. Conversations sparked, ideas ignited, and each meeting transformed into a symphony of shared aspirations. Jack discovered an unexpected talent within himself, a knack for connecting disparate voices into a cohesive chorus. As they discussed ways to present the findings, he began to see the potential for collaboration as a powerful ally, rather than as an undertaking to bear alone. He was not simply revealing forgotten truths. He was constructing a narrative that included the entire town in its rebirth. Emboldened by support, Jack felt the storm of anxiety dissipate gradually. But as the days whittled away, shadows lurked at the periphery of his mind. The school board's impending judgment loomed over him, potent and terrifying. What if they quashed his efforts? What if they insisted on preserving their comfortable consensus? The questions haunted him, swelling into a cacophony that demanded resolution. With each passing moment, Jack confronted his fears. He reminded himself that this was his story, too, a historical testament to growth and bravery. It was time to weave the artifact's legacy into the fabric of their shared reality. But just as Jack made peace with his resolve, a shocking email arrived, a critical response from the board, suddenly catapulting his efforts towards an unforeseen confrontation. The time had come, forcing him to face not just the community's skepticism, but the core of his own tumultuous hesitations. How far was he willing to go to tell the story that had so long been buried? Jack stared blankly at his screen, the email from the school board glowing ominously within the dim light of his cluttered office. Each word felt like a serrated edge, slicing through the resolve he had cautiously built. The board criticized his approach, dismissing the artifact as mere folklore, a relic of no academic value. They urged him to focus instead on standardized material, on safe narratives that wouldn't challenge the status quo. That dismissive message hung over him like a noose, tightening with every breath he took. His heart raced, the implications swirling in his mind like a tempest. Did they not see the potential that lay before them? This was not merely about an artifact. It symbolized the rich tapestry of history waiting to be written anew. As he leaned back in his chair, he felt the weight of their skepticism pushing down on him, reminding him of the whispers of doubt that had long resided within. Yet he knew he couldn't fold now. The lesson plan he had drafted echoed in his mind. There was something more significant at stake than his academic career. It was about storytelling, about bringing truth to light, no matter how uncomfortable that truth might be. His hands trembled as he decided to respond. He would not waver. Jack began to compose a rebuttal, clever yet respectful, detailing the historical significance he found in the artifact and why it warranted exploration rather than ridicule. With every keystroke, he remapped the terrain of his own beliefs. As he clicked send, a surge of adrenaline coursed through him. Maybe this was his pivotal moment, the fire he needed to burn away layers of complacency. He realized that he could craft something that wouldn't just be confined within the walls of his classroom. There was an audience outside of the school board, a community hungry for stories, for connection, for truths that resonated with their lives. Jack spent the next few days in a haze of productivity. He dove into research with a fervor he hadn't felt before, one that redefined his understanding of the artifact and its context. The exhilarating rush of discovery coursed through him, illuminating paths he had been blind to. His confidence grew as he uncovered alternate narratives, those of similar artifacts that told tales of resilience, and those who had championed them against formidable odds. This was no longer a solitary struggle. He was on a missionary quest to awaken the consciousness of those around him. In his sociable moments, Jack engaged with the local historians he'd previously reached out to. He invited them for an informal gathering at a local cafe. With cups of coffee steaming and conversation flowing, it felt electric. He articulated his vision of a community-wide project that wouldn't just focus on the artifact but would weave a narrative binding the historical past to the present. Many in the room echoed his excitement, adding ideas and pooling resources, creating an undercurrent of shared determination. They talked about workshops, community discussions, and even exhibitions that could transform perceptions. But beneath the surface of this growing fervor lay the shadow of doubt. With each new collaboration, Jack felt the weight of responsibility amplifying. What if others relied on him and he failed to deliver? What if the board publicly condemned his efforts? These thoughts lingered as a whisper in the back of his mind, yet he clamped down on this negativity. He was working for something bigger. The students and the town deserved this chance for enlightenment. Preparations began in earnest. Jack planned for an informal gathering where he would introduce the findings to the broader community, a risky venture. Yes, but it felt essential. If he wanted to truly stand against the tide of complacency, he needed to be prepared for the backlash. As he finalized details, doubts resurfaced, taunting him mercilessly. What if the community reacted unfavorably? Would he have the courage to contend with their wrath? Just as he leaned into the preparations, his phone buzzed. Another email. From the board, but this one was different. The subject line sent shocks through him, request for a public discussion. How far had he truly come, and was he ready for the unfiltered scrutiny of those whose views still intimidated him? The time for an actual confrontation was no longer on the horizon. It was knocking at his door. Jack's palms were clammy as he stared at his phone. The request for a public discussion felt like a challenge delivered with a sneer. He had fired up a small community spark, but now that flicker was being thrust into the glaring light, or so it seemed. Was he truly prepared for the judgment of his peers, their potential scorn and ridicule? His mind raced as the implications of this discussion settled deeper. A part of him wanted to argue that this request stemmed from their curiosity, a tacit acknowledgement of his work, but the more dominant voice feared it was merely a calculated move. They were entrenching their skepticism further, ready to dismantle everything he had built. Instead of succumbing to uncertainty, Jack turned his attention to the possibilities that lay before him. This was more than just a forum. It was an opportunity for him to shift the narrative, to turn the critics into allies. He envisioned himself standing in front of the board, armed with the knowledge he had painstakingly gathered, confidence coursing through him. The voices of the historians, students, and community members he had engaged with rushed back to him with vivid clarity, fueling his resolve. Jack hit the books again, driven by a mixture of obsession and necessity. The clock seemed to betray him as deadlines and preparations converged, yet he found surprising joy in the hustle. Each night turned into dawns, revising his notes, tweaking his presentation, preparing for the critical questions he anticipated would come his way. This was a shift. The man who once recoiled at the thought of confrontation was embracing it. He found himself reflecting on the artifact's significance, creating a lens through which the audience could perceive its value not merely as a cultural relic, but as a powerful representation of resilience in the face of adversity. He felt invigorated, driven by the hope that perhaps his efforts would usher in a new legacy for those who had been overlooked. However, he was realistic. He understood that there were detractors ready to dismantle his arguments. The thoughts nagged at him, prompting internal debates about balancing respect for historical scholarship with the stirring cries for innovation. Would he merely be seen as an educator championing an old cause, or as a visionary attempting to forge a new path through history? As he delivered his rehearsals to the empty walls of his office, he practiced navigating the potential minefields. He crafted responses, not just for his words but by drawing connections to the experiences of the audience. He visualized their skepticism transforming into curiosity, challenging him in the best way possible. The day before the discussion, exhaustion weighed heavy in Jack's bones. Yet he was also sparked with an electric anticipation. With the final touches on his slides, he felt more prepared than he had anticipated. Amid the chaos of papers piled on his desk, he rested briefly, taking a moment to siphon through his thoughts. But in the stillness, doubt seeped back in, with its relentless whisper sharpening, asking whether his preparation was enough. What if the skeptics used the platform to humiliate him? What if he couldn't deliver the promised transformation? As he glanced at his notes, an aggressive resolve took form. This wasn't merely about him anymore. It was about the stories that had been left untold, the voices silenced and the futures left unexplored. Tonight was not just a test of endurance. It would be the dawn of reckoning, a chance for Jack to step beyond the shadows of self-doubt and into the arena of critical dialogue. As the clock ticked away the hours, he reminded himself, if this was indeed a confrontation, it was one worth fighting. Little did he know that in those final hours, a surprising ally would arrive, one of the very critics he feared would shake his confidence. Someone who harbored unexpected sentiments. What would this encounter mean for Jack's journey? Would it further unravel the tight seams of his preparations or fortify them in ways he had yet to imagine? Jack barely slept that night. Thoughts ricocheted inside his mind, colliding with one another like adversaries in an arena, vying for dominance. Each tick of the clock felt like a heartbeat of his growing anxiety. As dawn broke, it illuminated the room, revealing the clutter of crumpled papers and scrawled notes, a testament to his frantic efforts. He stood before the mirror, his reflection a mixture of weariness and determination. The salt and pepper strands of his hair seemed to tell a story of resilience. He practiced his posture, forcing his shoulders back and his chin up. If he were to navigate this impending engagement, he needed to embody confidence. It was time to confront not just the peers who questioned him, but the internal demons that whispered he wasn't enough. Jack arrived at the venue early, a calculated decision to absorb the energy of the space before the crowd descended. The auditorium was empty but enchanted with a lingering history, echoing the passion of those who had stood where he now stood. The weight of his purpose pressed heavily upon his chest, yet he also found solace in it. He breathed deeply, letting the air fill his lungs, the calm before the storm. As others began to filter in, he recognized familiar faces, some skeptical, others intrigued. They were there to either uphold or dismantle his vision. He reminded himself that he had reached out to historians, activists, and students for their insights. This wasn't merely a lecture. It was a tapestry woven from collective threads. Just as he began his thoughts on how to establish common ground, a figure walked through the door, Dr. Marissa Wu, a prominent critic and esteemed historian whose opinions could sway the audience. Jack's heart raced. She was the very voice he had steeled himself to confront. Yet he felt a strange pull of curiosity and uncertainty. "Jack," she greeted, a ghost of a smile wavering at the corners of her lips. "Mind if we chat for a moment?" "Of course," he replied, feeling the pressure of the oncoming discussion dissipate slightly, replaced by the uncertainty of this unexpected interaction. "What you're about to present is crucial," she said, each word deliberate. "But the stakes aren't just for you. They're for everyone involved." Jack pondered her sincerity. Was she using this opportunity to further voice her criticisms, or was she genuinely invested in his success? The thought rattled him, and he fought to maintain composure. "I understand the historical responsibilities. My goal is to highlight the significance of our findings. Highlighting them is one thing, though distilling them into a narrative that resonates is another," she countered, and he caught the sparkle of challenge in her eyes. "You have to connect their stories to the present, make them matter to us now. Her words pierced through his preparations, igniting a realization that went beyond administrative details and data points. She was suggesting an emotional thread that could tie community narrative to meaning. He sensed the essence of what he needed to embrace, but how could he reshape his presentation in so little time? "Are you suggesting I focus on personal narratives?" he asked, searching her gaze for affirmation. "To weave them into my argument?" "Yes." She nodded, a flicker of admiration breaking through her formal exterior. "Stories resonate, they bind us together. Consider how you frame your discussion as a dialogue rather than a declaration." In what felt like mere minutes, the anxiety he wore like armor began to drip away. She was challenging him to elevate his viewpoint, to instill genuine connection rather than solidify walls built on skepticism. Her unexpected support awakened something dormant within him, a deeper understanding of the material and the community he aimed to reach. With her departure, a surge of urgency filled him as he stood alone again. He only had moments left before he swept into the discussion. The prospect of reworking everything felt daunting, yet he understood now the true risk wasn't just in facing his peers but in failing to bring forth a narrative capable of transcending skepticism. As he hastily restructured his notes, sweat forming at his brow, he recognized the importance of forging connections. But would this revelation be enough to transform his presentation into something more than just another debate? The moment of truth was approaching swiftly, and he felt exhilarated and terrified in equal measure. Just before he was to go on stage, a whisper of doubt crept back, questioning if he could truly do this. Could he leverage everything he had learned into a cohesive force, reshaping misconceptions while igniting empathy? Just then, as the moderator announced him, lightning struck in his mind. What if the very skeptics he feared had even more to teach him? The pulse of his heart quickened as he prepared to step into the arena. Jack journeyed toward destiny, unaware of the truth behind his greatest challenge yet. Would he rise as a beacon of understanding, or would the voices of doubt triumph once more? The moment Jack stepped onto the stage, the world around him blurred into a haze of muted sounds and flickering lights. All eyes were on him, but the familiar faces morphed into an indistinct mass of expectant judgment. He could feel their scrutiny like a physical weight pressing against him, but from the depths of that weight, a flicker of clarity ignited within him. He didn't need to battle them. He needed to invite them into his world. He locked eyes with the audience, a rush of adrenaline surging through him as he exhaled deeply. "Thank you for being here today. I know many of you carry strong opinions about the research we've conducted," he began, his voice steadying, "and I want to engage with those. Together, let us explore this complex tapestry of history." As he launched into his presentation, Jack felt the logic of his structured arguments slide into the recesses of his mind, overtaken by Marissa's challenge. Every statistic seemed a mere backdrop to the stories he intended to tell. He opted for a personal narrative, recounting a poignant encounter with a descendant of those he studied, weaving her words into his argument seamlessly. Her stories of loss and resilience became the lifeblood of his presentation, injecting emotion where before there had been only data. Gradually, he noticed shifting expressions among the listeners. Skepticism gave way to intrigue. The tension in the room felt palpable yet hopeful. He could see some leaning forward, hanging on his every word. It was as if he were no longer merely presenting, but rather inviting them to embark on a journey alongside him, exploring the past as a collective. "Imagine," he continued, sense of purpose washing over him, "beyond the charts and tables, that we connect personally to these events, real lives lost and forgotten, the culture that shaped them, and how it ultimately intertwines with our existence today." As he spoke, an unexpected surge tripped over his heart. His journey toward vulnerability was becoming evident, not just in his words, but through the realization that he was speaking about something much greater than himself. Feeling the energy shift, Jack spotted Dr. Wu in the back row, her expression now one of contemplation rather than critique. A momentary sense of validation fueled him. Perhaps she'd see how he had taken her feedback not just to improve a presentation, but to transform it into something worthy of their attention. Yet, as Jack delved deeper into the narratives, a flicker of doubt threatened to surface, making him question the authenticity of his approach. Could he maintain this engagement? The stories he shared felt raw, but was he truly grasping their significance? He fought the urge to pivot back to statistics, to cocoon himself in the safety of facts. No matter how we view our history, it always intersects with who we are today, he stated, channeling the urgency found in his earlier pursuits. This isn't just about accepting a narrative. It's about embracing the lives unfinished, the echoes still resonating in our lives. The audience was his canvas now, and he was an artist painting with vivid strokes of humanity. As he concluded, an unexpected applause erupted, ripples of applause resounding against the auditorium walls. Jack absorbed the energy. Affirmation surged through him. Yet, even in celebration, a thought nagged at the back of his mind. What awaited him beyond the applause? He had dared to expose himself, had bared his understanding of vulnerability and connection, but was he truly prepared for the scrutiny that could follow? Perhaps Marissa's initial challenge was just the beginning. "Thank you," he said, breathless, as the applause slowly dwindled. "I look forward to the discussions that will come from this." As he stepped down from the podium, his heart raced not just from exhilaration, but from the impending confrontation with the skeptics who would have questions. He realized that opening those doors could lead far beyond this room into a realm where discovery and revelation awaited him. But as doubt crept back in, he couldn't shake the unease that perhaps the confrontation wouldn't just center on old conflicts, but might reveal something unseen buried in his own perspective, a hidden realization that could shape who he was on a deeper level. Would he be able to face the truths that lurked within? Or would stepping further into these discussions demand more from him than he had ever been willing to give? As he stepped off the stage, Jack felt the flush of adrenaline start to ebb, leaving him with a palpable mixture of excitement and apprehension. The exhilaration of sharing his insights was overshadowed by the anxiety of the upcoming scrutiny. He navigated through the labyrinth of chairs toward the exit, dodging familiar yet intimidating faces. Each step felt heavier than the last, the applause still ringing in his ears but now fading, replaced by whispers of doubt and speculation. "Jack!" A voice called out, cutting through the noise. It was Marissa, her expression elusive, a blend of admiration and scrutiny. The sight of her rekindled the flicker of confidence he had felt earlier. "You really took a risk out there." "It was different." "Different," he echoed, eyebrows raised in inquiry. "You mean good different or good different?" She nodded, crossing her arms tightly, as if holding back further evaluation. "You've really connected with them. I hope you're ready for what comes next, though." Inevitably, her words echoed the thoughts nesting in his mind. Was he truly prepared for the discussions that would emanate from this engagement? The audience he had felt so bonded with mere moments ago was now a potential minefield of critique and dissent. Would they embrace the raw narratives he presented? Or would they pull apart the seams of his work? Stepping into the hallway felt like crossing into a different realm. The echoes of laughter and chatter surrounded him, yet he found himself seeking solitude. He found an unoccupied corner and leaned against the cool wall, trying to center his racing heart. The discussions he anticipated were now unavoidable. He could almost hear their inquiries swirling in the air, each a challenge beckoning him further into the depth of his own beliefs. Deep down, he recognized the opportunity for growth that lay within these potential confrontations. Jack had often viewed criticism as a barricade, but now it was becoming a doorway. He needed to confront his fears and his insecurities, the very fabric of his resolve. Perhaps embracing this discomfort would thrust him into a new realm of understanding. His reflections were interrupted as Dr. Wu approached him, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. "Jack, I want to commend you on that presentation. It was unorthodox in the best way possible," she said, her tone earnest. "But you know, it's one thing to present the histories, and another to shoulder their implications." Implications? He was drawn in, curiosity flaring. He had weathered the storm of vulnerability on stage, but the depth of her words suggested another wave was building. "Yes," she pressed, folding her arms in thought. "You've entered a delicate dialogue. one that'll require you to not only defend your view, but also to confront any biases or blind spots you might carry. The histories we hold are intricately linked with the perspectives we choose to adopt. Her words struck a chord within him. As he gazed into her insightful eyes, a real fear began to surface. What if the very truths he considered about the histories he had studied were marred by his own limitations? What if his understanding was not as profound as he had convinced himself? Jack felt an internal conflict brewing. The challenge was not just in defending his work, but in unearthing any uncomfortable truths, hidden within his own perspective ideals he hadn't been ready to confront. "Are you ready for that, Jack?" Dr. Wu gauged him as if projecting her own doubts onto him. "I don't know," he admitted, voice shaky yet steady. "But I want to be." "Then those discussions won't just be about them. It's time to open yourself fully to this process," she encouraged. As she turned to leave, her words lingered in the air, heavy with potential. The upcoming discussions would indeed unveil uncertainties, not just in his research but in his personal beliefs. The stakes were higher than ever. Revelations awaited him, perhaps gnawing at the edges of his newfound confidence. Jack took a deep breath, a wave of resolve washing over him. He stepped into the main hall, once more, prepared to face the questions and doubts, knowing they might unearth truths he had yet to confront. But with every step forward, he sensed the stirring of something greater, the prospect of understanding and evolution lurking just beyond the horizon. Would he emerge with clarity molded from discomfort, or would he retreat into the safety of his untested convictions? The moment had come for real engagement, and the horizon glimmered with promises of discovery. The main hall thrummed with energy. A cacophony of opinions and reactions swirled around him. Jack's pulse quickened as he blended into the crowd, aware he was now at the center of a burgeoning conversation. He had come to present, but it seemed he was also being summoned to engage. Beneath the surface of applause lay the fervent debate that could dissect his thoughts and beliefs. Conversations flowed freely, evolving into passionate exchanges. Jack roamed from group to group, overhearing snippets that stoked both his curiosity and nervousness. "He.s. claiming that the implications are larger than we thought," a voice piped up. "But does he realize how potentially naive that perspective could be?" Another chimed in, "I admire his courage, but I wonder if he.s. prepared for the backlash." The weight of their scrutiny pressed down on him. With each comment, he felt the splintered fragments of confidence and self-doubt collide within him. As the crowd began to disperse, Jack found himself standing before a small gathering that seemed particularly vocal. They eyed him with a mix of challenge and expectation. A woman with sharp features introduced herself. "I'm Emily. Your presentation left me questioning several of the foundations I've built my arguments on. Are you ready to defend your insights, or is this going to be more about your feelings?" Her tone was assertive, prodding, as if testing the steel of his resolve. "I'm ready to engage wherever the discussion leads," he replied, his voice firm but unsure. "I want to confront any and all perspectives." Emily nodded, seemingly satisfied, and the small group leaned in, eager for discourse. "Let us talk about your assumptions," she prompted. "What's to say that your view of these civilizations isn't just a reflection of your biases? You've made some bold claims without sufficient backing." Jack felt himself slip into a combat mode. Each question became a jab, each challenge an opportunity for growth. He had acknowledged the potential for introspection, but here it was, dire and confronting. That's a valid concern. He began, navigating through the discomfort with hesitant clarity. "I realize my framework is influenced by my background. I want to challenge that narrative, which is part of why I presented the way I did." Wanting to challenge is different from having the tools to do so effectively, Emily continued, folding her arms. "How do you plan to address criticism effectively?" The questions reverberated in his mind, drawing forth reflections on his methods and beliefs. There was a blend of defensiveness and realization, a tough pill to swallow. He realized he had stumbled into an essential dialogue, one that demanded he step across the divide of doubt and conviction. By actively seeking feedback and using it not just as a defense mechanism, but as a catalyst to grow, he asserted, trying to marshal his thoughts into a coherent strategy. I want to broaden my perspective as I dive deeper into these narratives. You speak well, but will you be able to put that into practice when the discourse gets heated? She pressed further, challenging him in a way that was unsettling but invigorating. I guess that remains to be seen, doesn't it? We're all evolving, aren't we? He replied, realizing that maybe, just maybe, this dialogue was both a battleground and a crucible for growth. As the discussion continued, Jack's protests and defenses began to blend with an infectious vulnerability. He felt himself drop veils he never thought he could. Here was the rhythm of understanding blossoming from discomfort. But just as Jack started to feel a surge of clarity, another figure loomed into view: Dr. Wu, her presence demanding silence from the group. "Jack," she said softly, but her eyes sparkled with determination. "Perhaps it's time for a broader discussion. I believe some crucial elements are still unaddressed." He felt his stomach clench. A broader discussion? The sheer magnitude of what lay ahead ignited both anxiety and an odd thrill. Was he ready to embrace this depth of confrontation? The paths ahead were murky, and Jack sensed that the unveiling truths would require more than just dialogue or personal resolve. They demanded exploration of the very fabric of his beliefs and fears. What awaited him in this unfolding confrontation would be a defining moment in his quest for understanding. As he prepared to engage deeper into the complex web of ideas that Dr. Wu was hinting at, a chilling thought pierced his consciousness. What if those hidden truths brought to light his own incapacities as well as his ignorance? What twists awaited him in the pursuit of knowledge? The moment lingered, heavy with anticipation. Jack stood at the edge of the gathering, acutely aware of the scrutinizing eyes fixed upon him. Dr. Wu's presence became a silent command, withdrawing the previous debate's intensity, yet thickening the air with its own resonance. He could feel the stakes shifting beneath him. This wasn't merely about defending his ideas anymore, it was an invitation to confront the very core of his convictions, with a hefty burden of expectations pressing down. "What crucial elements are we overlooking, Dr. Wu?" he asked, though his voice betrayed an edge of trepidation. Perhaps it was the cautious tone he adopted or the way his heart drummed a dissonant rhythm in his chest that revealed his anticipation. Dr. Wu paused, taking in the crowd, weighing their eagerness. "The systems of thought thousands of scholars have debated. Your exposition paved the way for a vital pivot. Now it's time to dig deeper," she responded, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "Let us explore the implications of your themes and how they connect across time and cultures." As she spoke, anxiety slithered through Jack. Had he been too simplistic in his arguments, too fast to claim expertise? His previous confidence began to fade, displaced by a growing fear of inadequacy. What if he no longer had a grasp on his own narrative? He had set the stage, but the essence was slipping through his fingers like sand. A murmur of expectancy surged through the crowd, compelling Jack to rethink his next words. It became evident that accepting this challenge was not just about proving others wrong or justifying his insights. It demanded vulnerability akin to stripping naked before an audience. Each civilization brings its own problems and perspectives. I aim to cut away the veneer and reveal the raw truths. He began slowly, choosing his words carefully. But perhaps that revelation was more about my lens than it was about theirs. Emily interjected, "Are you suggesting that your analysis lacks the depth it's supposed to convey?" Her voice was firm, but beneath it lay an underlying sense of curiosity, perhaps even a trace of admiration. Jack felt cornered and exhilarated in equal measure. "I'm questioning whether my narrative is indeed comprehensive enough to embrace the complexities of the subjects I dissect," he replied candidly. "I want this to become a shared dialogue, one where we confront not only the historical narratives but also the biases shaping our interpretations." Encouraged by his own candor, Jack leaned into the conversation. What if we reframed our assumptions? What if the cultures we discuss aren't merely legacies of the past but living entities that shape our present perceptions? A flicker of intrigue swept through the audience, and he noted their expressions shifting from skepticism to something resembling interest. Could he foster a deeper inquiry, one that might not only educate but ignite further passion in this tumultuous debate? Your willingness to be vulnerable is commendable, Dr. Wu said, nodding in affirmation. However, being open about one's limitations is as important as recognizing strengths. Are you prepared to receive both critique and clarity that might challenge your understanding further? Jack gazed around, confronting each individual with that same weighty question. The fear of exposure loomed, but he felt buoyed by the realization that vulnerability might be a pathway to deeper insights. He asserted finally, conviction blooming within. Clarity demands courage, and I choose to embrace that path. As the discussion began to morph, propelling them into a more nuanced inquiry about interconnectivity among civilizations, Jack felt something shift within. He was exploring territory that sparked curiosity, igniting his passion anew. The pieces of his own understanding began to fit into a greater mosaic that transcended mere dialogue, the pursuit of knowledge. But just as his confidence soared, Emily's voice pierced through again. So, how do you plan to turn this acceptance of your inadequacies into an actionable strategy for your work? What if this journey reveals more fears than answers? The ascendant moment of realization faltered, challenged by a potentially daunting truth. Jack's heart sank, for in her question lay a trail of uncertainty threaded with an exhilarating possibility. Would he emerge stronger, or would the exposure catalyze a deeper plunge into his personal oblivion? Jack knew the next course of action was pivotal. Now he needed not just to engage in dialogue but to transform it into a strategic exploration of pathways leading to self-discovery through feedback, collaboration, and perhaps even rediscovery. As he prepared to answer, uncertainty tightened around him like a palpable force. The next steps were critical, and Jack sensed that the answers could either fortify him or expose a fracture he had yet to confront. The moment hung suspended in the air, heavy with potential and fear. The choice seeped through each breath. What lay beyond this moment of truth promised to either illuminate his path or obscure it forever. As the conversation swirled around him, Jack could feel the tension tightening like a noose. The discussion had evolved from mere debate to a crucible of self-exploration. He realized that he was no longer just championing the artifact's significance, but rather delving into a deeply personal exploration of his own biases and the lenses he wore. Determined to confront the reflections that had been stirred, Jack stood a little taller. I understand that my presentation has opened up many questions about our narratives, and I want to evolve, he began, intent on carving a transformative path through the conversation. To deepen our understanding, we must challenge our own narratives and seek diverse perspectives. It's not merely a pursuit of knowledge. It's about cultivating a dialogue that invites everyone into this journey. His words resonated with the group. He could see heads nodding in agreement, a shared understanding starting to blossom among those once skeptical. This was transformative. Jack felt a surge of growth emerge from the rubble of his self-doubt. The audience wasn't merely questioning him. They were engaging in a conversation, one where he was not only the speaker but also an active participant seeking to learn. Emily leaned in closer, her interest piqued. So what's next for you? How do you intend to take this growth and channel it into your work? Jack paused for just a moment, contemplating this pivotal question and the realization that flooded over him. I plan to develop workshops rooted in collaborative inquiry, aimed at not just teaching history, but unraveling the narratives tied to our present. I want to harness the wisdom of all involved students, historians, community members to create a living and breathing depiction of history that reflects diverse experiences across time. The excitement in the room crescendoed, transforming the previous tension into an odd sense of unity. Jack could feel the shift. The thread of compassion intertwined with the serious pursuit of understanding had taken root. Dr. Wu stepped forward, her expression softer yet still carrying that characteristic sharpness. It seems you've moved from a place of defending your work to genuinely wanting to expand upon it. That's commendable. But remember, the journey of growth is fraught with challenges. Are you ready for those challenges, Jack? Jack nodded, fortified by the room's enthusiasm and the trust that was building within it. Absolutely. I'm ready to embrace criticism, adapt, and listen. This is a collaborative effort to create something worthwhile not just for me, but for every person who seeks understanding in the narratives that have shaped us. With those words, a palpable shift occurred. The looming specters of doubt that had once clung to him, weighing heavily on his spirit, began to dissipate. Instead, he found himself buoyed by collective energy. This was neither a singular endeavor nor a solitary fight against skepticism. It was a venture toward enlightenment guided by shared voices. Jack felt the irrevocable transformation occurring. He realized that he wasn't merely on this quest for validation or acknowledgement, but rather driven by a deeper sense of purpose. To revive the stories that had long been forgotten, and to shine a light on the interconnectedness of humanity throughout history. As the dialogue continued, Jack engaged with renewed fervor. It was clear to him now that embracing vulnerability allowed not just for personal growth, but for a shared journey that promised possibilities he had previously dismissed. Each question, each probing remark from his audience, became a stepping stone toward a more profound understanding. The specter of his fears was now a source of motivation. By the time the discussions began to wind down, Jack felt buoyed by a sense of accomplishment. This was not just a triumphant moment, it was the beginning of a new chapter in his life, where he conjoined his passion for history and education with his newfound courage to embrace vulnerability. The applause that rippled through the auditorium now felt deeply satisfying. It wasn't just appreciation for a presentation. It was recognition of a metamorphosis, his intellectual and emotional evolution into an educator who was willing to embrace both the past and the uncertainties of the future. In the days that followed, Jack established a series of community workshops that blossomed into an encompassing narrative project. Working collaboratively with others, he managed to engage community members in retaining their neglected histories, thus forging not just a platform of learning, but a shared legacy of understanding. Ultimately, Jack Rivera emerged not only as a teacher but as a bridge and innovative connector between past and present, individual stories, and collective identities. The journey transformed him in ways he never anticipated, allowing him to step into an authentically empowered role as an advocate for history in its truest form. The hidden civilization he unearthed was not just a discovery of the past. It became a resurrection of those who longed to tell their stories. He ended up proving to himself and to the town that the truths of history could span generations, unite communities, and foster unbreakable connections. The transformation was complete. Jack had embraced both his fears and his dreams, and the path ahead shimmered with the promise of authentic discovery. Now, he viewed every interaction as a chance not only to share knowledge but to also grow personally, knowing that sometimes beneath the surface of lengthy debates and heated discourse lay the opportunity for emotional breakthrough and profound collective understanding. Each lesson learned, each story shared, was another thread woven into a grand tapestry that could still tell the stories of those forgotten. This was it. Jack had achieved what he once feared he could not. He had not only embraced the past but had made it a meaningful part of the present. Now it's your turn. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and join the discussion of personal overcoming stories. Don't wait even one more second to share.